Okay, so it says me something very special that hey guys, you are live right now. Welcome, my friends. Welcome to Microsoft Excel Power
Okay, so
Platform
it
Meetup.
says me.
Okay, so there's an echo. There's another video which is running around. So welcome, my friends. Welcome to Saudi Arabia Microsoft Excel Power Platform Meetup. It's one place in finance solution, and this is a place where we come and connect with each other, share our knowledge, and learn also. So I'm Faraz Sheikh, and just quickly about me, as you know, that I'm Faraz Sheikh. I'm founder of Excel Exciting, and I'm an MVP and an MCD, and Microsoft Innovative Educator. And I love to write about Excel and some crazy stuff about automation. And my mission is here with my community, my friends, is to make easiest solution during your work with your Microsoft applications. And my passion is equally to learn from this community. So today I have a very special friend on the hot seat on the other side, and she's joining from UK. And do let me know in the chat where you are joining from. And she is Suzanne, and Suzanne is I just came across to her LinkedIn profile, and I was very much impressed that she's interested in talking. And as you know, that we have this meetup, Women in Tech, going on in Saudi Arabia, Microsoft Excel meetup. So I request Susan to please come and speak, and she immediately said, "Yes, for us, yes, why not? We should do this one, you know." And thank you, Susan, for accepting my invitation.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
It was really great, you know, to have such great tech women coming and speaking at this meetup. It is really awesome. So, just if you are someone is interested to come and speak, you can definitely write me back on my email, excelexciting@outlook.com, and we can happy to connect and even on LinkedIn, and you can just connect with me and we can set up some time. And just to make sure that this session is being getting recorded, so you can find this session recording available on the YouTube/Excel Exciting in the playlist of Saudi Arabia meetup sessions. So without taking much of your time, I will leave the floor to our guest today, Suzanne, who is going to talk about herself. And feel free to tell about yourself, Susan, and let us know what is there fixing that dirty data secrets, you know, that we need to
Yeah,
learn from you.
absolutely. Okay, let me see. Let's share. Okay, I think you need to stop sharing for. Oh, here we go. Replace current share. There we go. Right. Let me make sure that the sound is on because we're going to need that too because I've got some exciting things for you. Hopefully you can see my screen now. And my slides.
Yes, we can
Fabulous.
see.
Yes, well, hi everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm well aware that a lot of people on this call, including Faraz, are way more experienced in Excel than I am. Where my skills lie is that gap between business and technical. And so, what I hope to bring today to you is maybe some ways to approach data cleaning that you haven't thought of before. Because I am in that fortunate position that I get to work with a lot of different types of data. You might only ever work with the same kind of data in your organization. So, what I want to bring is just a bit of a different perspective and also, you know, data cleaning. I love it. It's my passion. It can be fun. So, let's celebrate it. And I guess I'm not quite like all the other data kids. I really do try to make data cleaning as fun as and exciting as possible. So to get started, I've got a little video for you.
When you think of superheroes, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Men in tights? Women with superhuman strength? Capes? Lots of superheroes wear capes, but only one wears a coat. A data coat. By day, she's Susan Walsh, but when dirty data rears its ugly head, she becomes the classification guru. What are the classification guru's superpowers? Consistency, organization, accuracy, and trust. with help from her good friend and trusty sidekick, the Data Whisperer.
Hi, Scott.
The classification guru wages war against dirty data, fighting her sworn enemies, misclassification, duplicate, and the typonator. It's the classification guru's job to clean up the mean streets of Excel City.
That was bang out of order.
So, when you're in Excel hell, don't let dirty data get you down. Call the classification guru.
Okay, let's get started. So what am I going to take you through in the next 60 to 90 minutes? Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, how I got here, how I ended up speaking to you guys halfway across the world. Then we're going to talk about what is dirty data, because it can be different things to different people. So I am going to go through various different types, some that you may be familiar with, maybe some not so much. Then I'm going to talk about the consequences of that dirty data. What happens with an organization or a business? And then I'm going to share tips on how can we help enable data accuracy and prevent some of these things from happening. Then I'm going to share my tips for cleaning data in Excel. And this is, when I normally do training, it is for like at really basic level. So some of this, you'll be like, oh, we already know this, but hopefully, again, like I say, you'll get some tips. Then my tips for maintaining and how I spot check data in Excel. I'm going to share with you the dirty data maturity model, which I created, and then at the end we will summarize. And what I might do is just take questions after every couple of sections, just to keep it flowing and give you guys a bit of a break as well. So first up, who am I? How did I get here? How did I end up in data? Was it always going to be data? Well, no. And like a lot of people, I fell into data. In fact, I'm so old that data wasn't really a career option when I was younger. I went down a very different path. I started and graduated with a degree in commerce, which is like a business degree. And this is really embarrassing for me, but this is some of the kind of analytics and charts that I have in my dissertation. This is what we had to deal with in the 2000s. That's as good as graphics got. So think yourself lucky, guys. After that, I worked in sales in my 20s. I even went on QVC and sold some bras. So I've had a very varied career. It went on to be even more varied when I opened a women's clothes shop here in Guildford. Beautiful clothes. And guess what? Nobody came in to buy them. Just absolutely bombed, basically. In fact, I was so broke, I couldn't afford to go bankrupt and I needed a job fast. And I found an ad online for a spend analytics company who classify spend data and analyze it for procurement departments. And that's really where I found my love for data. I found that, and still to this day, I still love it. Like, and even cleaning data now. But I started with the classification. It just came really naturally to me. It's like a kind of puzzle, and everything just fit, and it doesn't feel like work still. So I really enjoy that. I've also written a book called Between the Spreadsheets, Classifying and Fixing Dirty Data. That came out in 2001, which is crazy. And I can't believe it, but the second edition is launching in October. And I've got a whole new chapter on Gen AI because it didn't exist 4 years ago when I first wrote the book. That's how much and how far we've moved on in such a short space of time. And I've got people love the data horror stories chapter, which is like real life data disasters and how to fix them. And then also there's a case study chapter as well. And this whole book is how to do things in Excel. So it's how to classify spend data, how to normalize suppliers, how to build a taxonomy, how to clean names and addresses, etc. So, because no matter what tools are out there, we all go back to our default, which is Excel. So that's my book. I spent 5 happy years at the spend analytics company, and then in 2017 I set up my own business, the Classification Guru. The reason for the name is because part of our job is to Google a lot of companies to find out what they do so we can classify them. And the number of companies that have a terrible name and don't tell you what they do on their website is huge. So I wanted it to be really clear from the start in my name what I did. And in that time, we have worked across all industries, countries, and languages. We've classified normalized data. We've built customized taxonomies. We've cleaned suppliers. We've cleaned databases, material master data. We have done it all. And I'm going to show you some examples as well today. Along the way, I've also picked up a few awards and accolades, so that was quite nice. And also, I have a couple of data cleaning courses available. One's on Pluralsight and one is on O'Reilly. And I also have a course with the Analytics Institute in Ireland as well. And then more recently, as well as doing my data cleaning services, I have actually built a tool which will normalize suppliers on demand. So you literally drop a list of the company names into the tool and they will be standardized and normalized. So that is my new pet project that I'm trying to promote and help people out, make people more self-sufficient if possible. So that's enough about me. Let's talk about the good stuff. And I can't see the chat, but I would love for you to just type in the chat what kinds of dirty data you guys are dealing with at the moment. I don't know if I can I don't think I can pull the chat up. Oh, here we go. I feel like I'm going to break something if I click on this, but let's see.
No,
No,
you're not gonna make
I
anything.
can't see. But anyway, type some of your dirty data in the chat and then let's see if they come up in the next few slides or sections. Okay. So first of all, typos, misspelled words, descriptions, products, any names, anything you can think of. They are in every single data set. And it's a nightmare because if you're trying to do a keyword search, you're not going to find what you're looking for because it's been misspelled. Then we've got things like wrong or ambiguous descriptions. So I see this a lot in the procurement space where it might just say services. Well, unless you know the company name, it's very hard to know what kind of services. It could be anything from cleaning services to legal services. What about hardware? It might be IT, but it might be cleaning hardware, or it could be manufacturing hardware. It could be something else. So it's really important to have clear, usable descriptions. And then there's things like missing codes, and that can be an absolute nightmare if you are trying to monitor products, and especially in warehousing, if it's based on product codes and locations, etc. If you don't have those, it's going to be a nightmare. Then my favorite, or one of my favorites, is information in the wrong columns. And I see this a lot in the address side of data. So it could be the city is in the postcode column, the postcode is in the country column, the whole address is squeezed into one little cell. It can be an absolute, and there's no standardization. So some of the data has that, some of it doesn't, and it can be really inconsistent and messy and very hard to clean as well. The next thing is no standard units of measurement. So across the globe, we work in different units of measure. I tend to work in centimeters, but there's inches. It could be meters. What about miles or kilometers? You could have weights in terms of grams, ounces, kilos. I mean, the list goes on. And if you don't know that you're working in different units of measure with maybe different regional data, then that's going to cause a lot of problems. The other thing is currency issues too. So I see this a lot, if your numbers don't stack up, it could be because maybe there hasn't been a currency conversion or something like that, or it's been done the wrong way. The way that I know we had done the wrong currency conversion was I had a whole load of $500 taxis in my data set, and that's highly unusual to have taxis that are that expensive. So that was how we knew that something wasn't quite right there. And then there's formatting issues. And again, if you can, I would love for you to type how you format your dates in the chat box right now, because I can guarantee before even seeing it that I know there's going to be a lot of different formats from day, month, year to month, day, year, to year, month, day. And then also, what about separators? Do we have dashes? Do we have slashes? Do we have dots? Or do we not have any separators at all? It can be really difficult and it can cause multiple versions of the same date. That could mean things like documents don't match up if you're matching on invoices, in my world, or even if you're just trying to find something, you might not even realize that you're working with a different data set. Like the problem that I have specifically with Excel, and would love some of your advice at the end of this, is we do a lot of work with the US, and the second that I open the Excel sheet, it will try and convert the dates to the UK. So we've actually got around this by setting up a US machine. So we just like open the files on the US machine, because that's the easiest thing to do. It's a bit of a frustration, but something to be aware of. And then, of course, all of those things will create our good friends, the duplicates. They exist in every single data set, and it might not be exact duplicates, but near duplicates. So a Rob Smith and a Robert Smith, or a Coke and a Coca-Cola, or a PwC and a PricewaterhouseCoopers. See all this stuff all the time. So the more we can minimize these issues at the point of input, the better all our lives will be. But let's get on to the good stuff. Let me show you some examples of some dirty data. So first up, we have LinkedIn. We all know LinkedIn. I mean, I met Faraz on LinkedIn. It's a networking, business, recruitment, training platform. What it is not is a restaurant, but somebody classified this as a restaurant because they saw it in the description. And this is where context and data is really important. So when you are looking at a spreadsheet, don't just look at that one row. Don't just look at that one cell. Don't just look at one column. Look at all the data around it. It will guide you and give you context, because if this person had actually been taking all this information into account, they would have known that it shouldn't have been classified as a restaurant at all. It should have been a marketing subscription or training or something like that, maybe even advertising. But the other thing is that when we are working with data, I think sometimes we assume we know what something is. And this is a great example of when you should not assume. We all think of Tinder as that online dating app, but actually, what if it's not? And this is what happened to me with a UK company. I was classifying their data, and I just knew that there's no way that they would be doing any kind of business with Tinder because it would damage their reputation. Again, context was really important. And so I looked at the description, it said data cabling. I was like, okay, something doesn't tie up here with my knowledge, my experience. I know that this isn't right. So when I did do some digging, it turns out there is a Tinder Corporation Limited in the UK that is an IT services company. So there you go. It just proves that you need that extra information, you need that context, that knowledge, and just a double check occasionally. And then next I have some messy addresses for you. Well, actually, it's one single customer supplier, but they have multiple lines of addresses. So look, we've got St. Paul and St. Paul here, spelled different ways. You could even have punctuation in there that could cause extra versions as well. So it's really messy. And then also we've got some abbreviations as well, which create extra versions of the same thing. Just things to be aware of. I'm going to show you some tips on how I kind of flag these things and pick them up later, but this is kind of real life dirty data that I see. And then the other thing is, same supplier again, they've got multiple different payment terms against the one company, which shouldn't happen. They've got unnormalized data too, as you can see. So the yellow columns are where we had tidied up and suggested some recommendations. And you know, it's more than just having messy data at this point. How do you know which invoice account to assign an invoice to? Will it go to the right account? Will it get paid on time? Will it get assigned to two different accounts and be paid twice and you don't even know? I mean, there's so many things that could go wrong with this. So always were good to be wary of. Here's another example where we had a client with a lot of vendors. once we normalized those names, you can see there was only actually 3 suppliers out of all of those rows of data. What we did was they needed a golden record for the new system that they were implementing. So we went through and identified which one would be the golden record and assigned it a number. Once we did that, we were able to then start cleaning the addresses. And as you can see, they were messy. They were really messy. In fact, some of them weren't even correct. They were all over the place. So as you can see on that second to the right box, how much cleaner and standardized that is. On the left, it looks like there's multiple accounts, and there's not. It's all just different. And then once we did that, we were able to then categorize the data for them and see what it was. So our process, or my steps, is normalize your data first, then clean or classify it. And that's the way to be most efficient. What else have we got? Well, what about some product information? We did a project for a company in Germany, and this is all the different versions of Coca-Cola and the SKUs that they had. Once I tidied up those descriptions, you can see the color blocks where it's actually all the same item. Look how many versions of the same product exist in the original data. That's crazy. I mean, just imagine what impact that's having when you're doing a report. You have no idea what you're selling or using or buying. It's crazy. And again, here's some more manufacturing parts, very messy descriptions, no kind of standard flow or format. So we used a naming convention and tidied everything up. So everything on the right is nice and tidy. And again, there's no way of identifying similar products from the information on the left, whereas we were able to do that on the right. So, and then from that, you can then start to identify if the dimensions are right, if there's different dimensions, if there's different codes, etc. So it really is an important first step. And like I say, normalization is really, really important, but it's important to also be wary because there can be more than one company with the same name in different countries. And that is what happened with Granger. There's a hardware company in the US, but in the UK, it's a house builder and a landlord. So really important to make sure that, using the context again, using the rest of the data, looking at the descriptions, does this make sense? And here's an example of some normalized data that we see on a pretty regular basis. In fact, I'm doing a proof of concept for a client right now. Normalized 13 suppliers down from 33 or something like that. I mean, the power that normalization brings is huge. And not just from a client or reporting perspective, but from a making your work life easier. Don't you want to clean just one Willis Towers Watson rather than all these different ones? Because, it's all great that they're all in alphabetical order, but some normalization requires adding or removing the word the in front of it or or something else. So they're not always obviously to group together when you sort A to Z or Z to A. So make your life more easier, normalize that bit first and then do the rest of the work, and then it saves you time. And also it can help if you've got records with missing information in some of them and not in others, it can help you populate that missing information from a different record, but really you need to normalize it first to do all that. And here's another example of really powerful normalization. So we have quite a few suppliers here on the left, 28 of them. They were normalized down to 7. And as you can see, the value stayed the same. But that is telling a very different picture in terms of how many accounts you've got, what's going on, even who your top customer, supplier, etc. is. It gives a very different picture. But it's not just all financial procurement data. I mean, we have actually worked with latitude and longitude data too. We were researching some industrial estates in Europe, and this is where the latitude and longitude was taking us, to the middle of the ocean somewhere. So we knew that wasn't right. So what I did was I looked at the data, the context, looks for patterns, and we found out that actually, guess what? It was the wrong way around. When we switched it, we find what we were looking for. So again, and the more you work with your data and look at it, the easier this stuff becomes as well. You become really familiar and things really jump out when it's not right. But of course, we all know working in Excel can be quite tricky because there's loads of rows and it's hard to differentiate. So I will share all my tips and tricks with you on how to get over that. I'm sure you've got your own as well. But how can we prevent some of these mistakes that are happening? Well, we have to remember to not assume that we know what something is. Double check it. Use that context. Use even, all the information that you have as much as possible to give that context. And think about, would the company that I'm working for use this product or service, or sell this product or service, or buy it, or whatever it is? Does that make sense? And values are a really great way of guiding, is this the same product? Well, actually, the weights are different or the unit price is different. There are a number of different data points that can help you decide if it's the same or different, because it's not always going to be clear. And then Google it if you don't know. It's a legit skill. We are experts at it here. Just remember that if you're Googling company names, to put the country name after it if you're with a global data set, because just like the Granger example, you can have different companies in different countries, and Google will always bring back the most local things to you first. So just remember those things. And then again, when you do get to that website, does this website match the description and the information you have in your data, or does it seem a bit off? If it does, refine your search, try again, just make sure. But my goodness, doesn't all this feel like a bit of hard work? I mean, why should we bother? Well, first of all, you, me, we're all going to save time fixing dirty data. Everybody wants that. And also, I bet you that a lot of time you are tired of fixing the same thing over and over and over again. So let's try and stop that. Because sometimes it's really costly. You might need to get external help, and then the costs mount up. It can affect your decision-making process. The things like budgets. What about fraud and risk management? Are you doing business with legitimate companies that are financially stable? If you don't have the right information, you don't know. And even things like, are they ethical? All really important to businesses, but if you don't have the right information, you can't do searches properly. Regulatory issues too, and it's more than just, privacy, but, products, particularly in finance or pharmaceuticals, you have to have the right information. And then there is privacy laws like GDPR, where it's not good enough to just keep that information safe. It has to be accurate too. And then something that we don't often think about as much is reputational damage. So what is the cost of getting a hefty GDPR fine, losing our customers' data, or working with a supplier that's been shamed in the news, or how we've treated, whatever? That can be really powerful because it takes years to build up reputations and they can be ruined overnight. And of course, dirty data makes all of our lives more difficult, and who wants that? But I think when we try to talk to our decision makers and budget holders about getting money to help with cleaning our data, they know there's cost and time savings, but they still struggle to see the value in it. And so the thing I say to you is tell them that they're going to increase their profitability and their bottom line by having cleaner data. That's the thing that might catch their attention and grab them and make your life a little bit easier too. So what about the consequences of that dirty data? What is going to happen to you, your organization, all the different aspects? Well, if we look at reporting and decision making, first up, cost savings. And in my world, can you negotiate better rates with your suppliers and save more money? Well, if you don't have that information, how do you know? When you're negotiating, if you don't have the same information as the person you're negotiating with, that's not going to be good. Supplier rationalization or customer rationalization, you've seen the power of what normalization can do. Not only is that good in terms of an analytics point of view, but What about costs? Like if you have CRM systems, you're paying to store the same person 5 times every month. Like think of the money that could be saved just from doing that. And then it's going to impact things like forecasting. I mean, it could be as simple as someone put an extra zero in somewhere, but that could mess everything up. If you're not looking at your data, being familiar with it, looking for patterns and trends, then you might miss that. And then budgets, like I said, budgets, it could even be things like headcount, promotions, pay rises. I mean, there's all kinds of things that data can impact. It's not just about how much more money can we make or save. And even things like targeting the right customers. So when you do have those CRM systems, you want the right information. You don't want to be sending out information by mail to addresses that don't exist, to people that don't live there anymore, or even people that aren't your right customer base. If you don't have that information, it's wasted money. Even emails, and storing that information, just only store what you need. And then even things like shipping the correct products. Does it have the right code or has someone made a mistake? Someone told me once that they kept ordering a sofa and it kept arriving in the wrong color, and that's because it had the wrong sticker code on it. So, there's lots of different places and areas where that can go wrong. It could be what if the dimensions are wrong. I've heard stories about somebody putting a television as 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter instead of a meter by a meter. I mean, that happens. And if it's not picked up in a system, not everyone has systems, that's going to mess up your load planning, how much you can fit on a truck. I mean, if you can't deliver on time to your customer or client, then you could even be penalized for that and get fines and subject to fines. So it's a whole knock-on effect. And then, you guys work in Excel, you know what it's like. You look at it for hours on end until you can't see straight anymore. You get a little bit snowblind. Sometimes just flipping it round from A to Z, Z to A, flipping a different column to sort, suddenly you see something that pops out. But another great way to check the quality of the data or for any inconsistencies is analytics and reporting too. So back to those good old normalized suppliers, here's a few that I see regularly in the kind of data sets that we work with. When we normalize that, that picture changes a lot. The values change, there's less suppliers. What could be missed? It's really important. But it's not just that. I work in the categorization classification space. Sometimes it doesn't stick out until you look at it in a different way. So here is an IT company. And this is a true story. This is a company I was checking the classification. And what is this? Facilities cleaning in an IT company. I don't think that's right. When I looked at the invoice description, it was keyboard cleaning spray or something like that. And somebody had picked up the word clean and decided to classify it as cleaning. So again, that's where that context comes in. They hadn't looked at the supplier, which actually was IBM. So we got rid of that. We changed it. And suddenly our hardware maintenance goes up in spend or usage. So, that is really powerful and a great way to just look at your data in a different way and see if anything that kind of pops out at you. What about analytics? Well, first up, here is some data that I worked on for a client, and they had all these different categories ranging from HR to construction to legal. We reclassified them all to legal services. They actually had 40% more spend under their legal services than they thought they did because it was being miscategorized. I mean, that's a huge amount of money that's in the wrong place. And that could be anything. That could be product usage or product storage, or it could be anything. If it's not accurate, it's going to mislead you. And then technology implementation, whether that is a new tool or the latest sexy gadget or Gen AI that's coming out, the things that I see time and time again are things like data cleaning is often neglected. It's always an afterthought. Errors are only discovered post-implementation, by which point the staff that are using it claim it doesn't work. They lose faith, they're disengaged. They weren't even engaged in the first place to ask what they really wanted. And because the data is unclean, they think the tool doesn't work. And then it can cost a lot of money to fix, way more than if you just cleaned your data beforehand. And then you have to hope that those staff will then engage again and adopt that technology and use it, because if not, that project is going to be abandoned. And I've heard stories of millions on projects that have been abandoned because it didn't work and it wasn't clean. And this is so prevalent now with the Gen AI, the agentic AI that's coming through, because it needs to learn from clean training data. And the only way you're going to clean that is with people like us. And it's just not going to work. You can't blindly assume that the AI is going to fix everything, because guess what? It's not. So when you are using AI and Gen AI, here are some questions to ask when you're using it. And this could be for text, this could be for numbers, it could be for code, it could be whatever it is. Ask these questions. So who's the audience? Who's this tailored towards? Does this information fit? What's the objective that I'm trying to achieve? What's the context? Because again, we know that's really important. And then, are we using this to enhance or enrich data, or to completely create new information? Can we trust this information? And if we're not sure, can this information be checked or verified? Like, where's the source of this? What did it come from? How can we backtrack on this? Because it's not just some dirty data that's on the line here, it's your credibility as well. So things that you need to be wary of when you are using these tools. We all know about the hallucinations, and a really great example that I can give you is in our Samification tool, we have like a master reference list of supplier names that have been normalized. So the first part of the model, the data goes in, it matches with anything in there. Anything that doesn't match, it then goes through a list of rules, and it goes through our own GPT model, which has been learning from our data. So it should be perfect, right? But it's not. It's literally making things up and grouping similar company names together and calling it something, if it states ABC Limited, ABC Cars, ABC Fruit, it's grouping it all together as ABC Group. Well, we didn't tell it to do that. It just decided to do it itself. So you have to be so careful. It can also make up facts and information. So again, you have to be really careful. And there can be bias in there too, and that could be from the fact that historically there has been bias in whatever the data is that you've used, but you have to be aware of it. And then also, if you are using it, think about what information am I putting in and where is that going to end up? Because you just don't know unless it's your own private model, ring fenced off from the world. There are no guarantees, so just be mindful of what you're putting in there. And, it really is true from decades ago to right now, it's rubbish in and rubbish out. So the big question is, will AI take over my job or our jobs, especially in Excel, right? It's going to fix everything. Well, I say, as long as it can't tell the difference between a dog or a mop, an apple or an owl, or a dog or a bagel, I think we're all safe. So let's just stop there for a minute, and I will see if there's any questions or anything like that. Let's have a wee look here. So schedule a call.
Yeah, Susan. So when you mention about like unit of measurement, like there are places where people they come across cartons and pallets.
Yeah.
Like when you have one box having six pieces and it makes one carton, and one carton can hold how many pallets?
Yeah. And what is one box? Is that a box of 24 or 100? Or yeah, it can get messy quickly. And then
Yeah.
is it 1 kilo or 1 pound? It's
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's means a reply from the WhatsApp saying that what is your data like when you ask them that what scares them is that the number stored as a text.
Oh, yes.
I think that's really evil, like when you try to do VLOOKUP and you see, and when you're really a beginner and you
Yeah.
try to look up that information, it's you have same numbers over here, and the best part is that they are always right aligned. Even the number is also right aligned. So
Yeah.
what you mentioned is very right, very true. Your
I
for
have the opposite problem. I have a lot of invoice numbers which are really text, and so it tries to make them numbers, and it's like, no, I don't want a number. I want text, please.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I think questions are coming in. I'm watching it and I'll definitely drop it on the chat.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, number stores as text. Okay. Anything else I need to? Airport construction development, counting airports and airplanes.
Yeah.
They, oh yeah. So in my book, there's a really interesting story about a hospital that was built in Scotland. And once it was finished, there wasn't enough space between the air ducts and the ceiling. And it's basically because somebody had copied and pasted the wrong information into a different column in Excel. It was literally a simple error like that, and it wasn't kind of resolved. And it cost millions to fix this. Okay, right, let's get back to this. There we go. Okay, so how can we enable data accuracy? Because it's kind of tricky. Data problems really are people problems. And how do we get through this? Well, normally it's governance, but it's such a scary, boring, intimidating word. People don't like it. What can we do? Well, I tried to make it a little bit more interesting. So this is a post I ran. It's called just visually, your data with governance, your data without, and then I talk about the data quote. And really, governance is about drawing inside the lines and keeping it all, neat and tidy and keeping everyone on the same path. But getting everyone on board with that can be really difficult. So I came up with something, but before I do that, I just want to kind of give you some tips. So I think we need to realize that when we are trying to enable data accuracy, there's no quick fix, there's no magic button, and there's no software in the world that's going to fix everything. There's also no such thing as a perfect data set. It's about getting it as perfect as it can be for what you need it for. And then new data needs to be reviewed by a person. So get somebody who has experience in that space, someone who knows the carton sizes to have a look and just sense check it and make sure it's okay. But it is literally the whole organization's responsibility to keep data clean because finance might input some of the information, sales and marketing might input some of the information, some of it could be procurement, some of it could be supply chain. There's so many different people involved. It's everyone has to be on the same page. And you have to agree those common standards, terms, processes, etc. And it's just as important. You can't clean it and leave it. You have to maintain and refresh that data because it's going to change, it's going to update. There's new data coming in all the time. But actually, more than that, you need to spot check regularly too, because that data you've cleaned, it might not still be clean in a month or two's time. Somebody might have accidentally cut and paste something or deleted or had a difference of opinion. So you need to just check, go back, make sure that consistency is there. So that is why I created the data code. What is the data code, you might ask? Well, first of all, it's a framework to help minimize those errors, to help with data governance for everybody, to engage data and non-data professionals alike. And it's memorable and fun, and that's what we need to get people to be more engaged. So let's look at the C for consistency. Everyone should input data the same way and have the same processes. You need to agree those fields and data points that really must be populated without exception. So that could be as simple as first name, last name, and an email address, or it could be product name, product weight, and product code. Depending on what kind of data you're working with, you know, the number of data points that you need as standard could be different, but agree that with everybody who's involved, because actually by speaking to other stakeholders, you might discover that actually there's more important information used by another department that you didn't even know about. So it's really important to get everyone involved. Use those same units of measure, define what they are, use the same language, and that's not necessarily like English or French or whatever, but terminology, especially within businesses, there can be so many acronyms. So just be clear that everybody knows what everything means. And currency too, be clear on that. You know, have like we see now like USD amount or EUR for euro amount. So make it really clear within the column, you know, within the data what the currency is. And then have that consistent formatting for dates, addresses, phone numbers. And I'm going to take you through some cleaning later, but it's things like upper or lowercase. Do you need punctuation? Do you not? What about abbreviations? All these things create dirty data. So it's really important to lay those out. And it might even seem like something really obvious, but it's not. Not to everybody anyway. And then we move to O for organized. So have that data nice and organized. Categorize it so it's easy to find. Could be by region, by country, by division, by department, by product, any way you need it. But you need your data to be consistent first before you can do that. Otherwise, it's going to create more inconsistent data. Then, of course, your data's got to be accurate. But define what that is within the department that you're working in, because it will be different to different people. You know, finance, the numbers have to be 100% accurate. But in sales and marketing, rounding on your sales numbers is probably okay. So define what that is. Means different things to different people. All these things that I've just told you about, you know, it could be all these, you know, having a full name and email address so that you can contact them, or you might need an address to actually mail something to them. Or if it's in finance, it could be we need their bank account details to be able to verify them. So define what that is. And once your data is consistent and organized and accurate, guess what? It becomes trustworthy. So you can really rely on it and make good business decisions. This means you can report to management with confidence. You can get visibility on spend, customers forecasting, inventory, sales, and so much more. And you're going to make better business decisions, and it's going to give you credibility within your organization too. And that's just as important. But it's not good enough to just put that data coat on. You have to keep it on all year round. Don't let it slip off. Regularly maintain your data to make sure that it stays on. And depending on the type of data that you work with, the volume, it will be different maintenance refreshes depending, but it could be anything from daily to 6 monthly. But I wouldn't leave it any longer than 6 months because data changes so quickly. You know, if you leave it a year, you're just kind of almost having to redo the whole thing again, and then it becomes a larger piece of work. You know, small, little, and often is really good. So if you need a little hand or a reminder of the data code, this is also on the Classification Guru YouTube channel. So I'll just show you this little video.
Are you leaving your data out in the cold? You wouldn't go out into sub-zero temperatures without the correct protection, so why do so many companies forget to protect their data? Unprotected data can lead to bad business decisions that cost money and put jobs at risk. That's why your data needs its coat on. This means making sure your data is consistent, organized, accurate, and trustworthy. Consistent means using the same standards, terms, and classifications company-wide. Organized data makes it easier to find. Think of it like a messy closet. It can be difficult to find what you're after, even when you know it's in there. When organized correctly, it becomes easier to find what we want. Data should be accurate, which can mean different things to different people, but at its most basic level, accurate data is correct. And finally, data should be trustworthy. This is critical. If your team can't trust the data, they might not use it. And business decisions around jobs, staffing and budgets are all based on data, so it's got to be right. If you'd like to speak to an expert about data in your own business, visit theclassificationguru.com to find out more.
Finally, I love an acronym. And, when we're talking to non-data people, it can be hard to get them on board. Like I said, give them an acronym. So I like to say that data is like a classic car. It's only valuable and usable if you look after it. If you let it rust, if you let the car rust, nobody wants it. It's exactly the same with data. You have to look after it and maintain it and take care of it and take ownership of it as well. So that is my enabling data accuracy section. I am going to move on to my tips for cleaning data in Excel now. So hopefully this will maybe give you a little different perspective. So this is some of the kind of instructions that I give in my courses. So as I say, it's based at your really lowest level, and then hopefully from there you can pick up some tips. But some of this you are going to be like, yeah, we know this, but it's always good to reinforce. So first up, always keep a clean backup. Always just have it somewhere just in case. Even with document history and retrieval and storage, if you've ever lost anything, and I have lost like a couple of hours of work before in the past, you never forget the trauma of that. So always better to be safe than sorry. The other thing that I do is I never overwrite existing data for my clients. So if they send me a data set, I will create new columns and put the clean data in those columns. There's a really good reason for that. First of all, it's then easy to track. We know working in Excel, mistakes can happen and data can slip. So if you have the original data and then the clean data, you can look side by side to make sure that everything's on track and looks right. The other thing actually at the end of the project is if you go to the business and say, look, this is what it was and this is what it is now, that's really powerful. I think most people don't really know what dirty or clean data looks like. And so if you can show it side by side, that's really powerful, like I have done with examples today. And then that helps to reinforce the value of doing this. And the other thing is I always actually go and clean whatever data I'm working on in a separate tab. So when I'm cleaning data, I don't do it row by row. I will approach it by data point. So it might be the name first, for example, normalization. So I would put that into a new tab and I would normalize it in there. Then pull that back into the main data once it's cleaned, just in case I'm doing a search and replace and something goes wrong and it hits the whole data set. I've done that before and not realized for maybe like 10, 20 minutes. Trying to unpick that is an absolute mess and a nightmare. Like removing the word ink from everything, it's a nightmare. So I'm always looking for being safe. And then the thing that I will do is I'll create a row ID in the original data, a unique row ID, and then I'll use that and copy that into the new tab that I'm working in so that it's easy to pull that data back. Because the other thing is if you're using lookups and you want to use a name, sometimes if there's accents, it can be really messy and or spaces, it doesn't always merge back. So having a row ID is the perfect way. And then before you start to work on your data, if you don't already have a list, just decide on the formats and standards that you want to work with, because changing your mind halfway through doesn't work. If you're going to change something, clean everything in one way and then fix it all at the end. And again, engage other stakeholders too, so that you're not wasting your time cleaning and then suddenly someone goes, oh, but I really wanted X, Y, Z. And then you're like, oh, but I've just cleaned this. Now I've got to do it again. And then my favorite, I don't know how many times I have messed up with filters, but yeah, that's my advice. Always watch those filters. And when I am cleaning data in Excel, The main formulas and functions that I'm using are things like, well, actually, I'm going to take VLOOKUP off of that now. I am firmly into the XLOOKUP zone. It's taken me a few years to kind of wean myself off the VLOOKUP, but now I'm firmly in the XLOOKUP camp. So that's my top tip. Much easier. Text to columns is a good one. Concatenate, trim, the left, right column, and then upper and proper case as well. So when I am normalizing company names, which is generally the first thing I do, and this could be people's names too, but specifically for company names, I am going to convert it to uppercase. And I don't know why, but for me, it's a lot easier to spot inconsistencies when it's all in uppercase. Now, randomly on the flip side of that, it doesn't work for addresses for me. I need to see addresses in sentence case. But for normalization, uppercase is definitely the way to go. I'm going to use the trim formula to get rid of any unwanted or hidden spaces. Particularly in the kind of data that I work with, you can have like 3 or 4 spaces in between words sometimes. It's really crazy. Going to remove any suffixes, but there is a risky list. And suffixes are things like INC at the end of a name or LTD, SA, PTY, PTE, all the things that company names probably have after them. Then I'm going to use a pivot at the end to aggregate those suppliers and have a look and check them. So I'm going to take you through that in a bit more kind of screenshot step-by-step process. So here's what I'm going to do. I've got my original column. I'm going to create a new column and I'm going to put everything into uppercase. And then as you can see, I don't know why, but to me, it just looks a lot easier to read and then start to identify things that are the same. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a pivot table. I'm going to put my normalized supplier in there and I'm going to start looking for common suffixes and make a list of the things that need to come out. So I talked about the risky list. These are the kinds of words or letters that you have to be really careful. You can't just remove them from the data because you might be taking out part of a company name or part of a word. So limited you'd think would be pretty sensible, but actually if you take limited out and the company's called unlimited, you're left with the word un, so it's not so good. So how do we get around this then? Well, the thing that I like to do is I'll do a write formula, and maybe this is something different that you haven't thought of before, but if, for example, I'm looking for the LTD or an LLP at the end, I'll do write comma 4. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I want to make sure it's not part of another word, if that makes sense. So when I do that formula, as you can see with the write B2 4 formula, there's some have 4 characters in this and some have 3. And so it becomes easy to kind of pick out the ones that I need to remove. What I can then do is filter on those specific suffixes. So in this case, I've done it on the .com. I can't obviously do a search and replace on the normalized suppliers column because there could be .coms in there that needs to be there. So I need to move that into this column D, which is my working column, just using an equal formula. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to have to remove my filters. I'm going to copy and paste special values so that it becomes text because we can't edit on a formula. Then I can do my search and replace, remove my .coms that I've needed. Then they can go back into the normalized supplier column using an equals and the cell number again. And then once it's back in the normalized column, you're going to then have to do again a copy, paste special values to set that back to text. And then you just keep going through this process. And then I can guarantee that when you think you've got everything, you'll still find some stuff. So for example, here's a couple of examples where, again, like I was saying, when you sort, it's not always really obvious that they're side by side. So we've got a few 1-800 got junk still and some 1-800 flowers. So you just keep going back into that data and cleaning until you can't see any more. I mean, there's always going to be something hidden. You're always going to have something, but if you can get rid of the majority, then you're winning. And then again with names, so decide on a format and stick to it, whatever's going to work best for you. Do you want the name together or separately? What about the middle initial, salutations? How do you want to deal with those? Because specifically for things like CRM systems and emailing, if you put your first name and the middle name together, you don't want like, "Hi, Susan E. Have you heard about our great new product?" Like, I want to be called Susan, or I definitely don't want to be called dear first name. So really important to have a think about that, depending on what data you're working with. How am I going to do this? Well, I am going to set my view. I'm going to freeze my panes and put my filters on, which is probably standard for you guys, but I always just put it in because I keep that as habit now. For names, in this example, they're all in one column and I'm going to split them out. And actually, yep, so I'm going to copy that and then I'm going to paste that into a new working sheet. Now, as you can see, guess what I forgot to do in this example? I forgot to put a row ID in, but shh, don't tell anybody. And I'm going to be using text to columns to split this out. But like I say, I always create a copy of the name so that because it splits out from the first part of the name. So I want to be able to compare it to what the original was to make sure it still looks right. So I'm going to highlight my column. I'm going to do my text to columns. You guys, I'm assuming have done this, so you know like spaces, but it could be commas, semicolons, dashes. I've seen everything. We do for a client that doesn't want a CSV file, so we do pipe delimited instead, so it can be any kind of thing. And then of course, my trusty little table at the bottom will keep me right on how many columns and things and what it's going to look like. So then I've got my first name, my last names. I'm going to put my filters on, and then, yeah, not so bad with names. There's like 4 columns there, but when you do this with the addresses bit, which we'll go into, there can be like literally tens and tens of columns. It can be quite intimidating. But I like to just reapply that filter so I know what I'm dealing with. So the next thing is I decided for this example that I would combine the first name and the middle initial, or in this case, there's 2 middle initials. So I'm going to use the concatenate. And this is like the function wizard. I live by this for all my formulas. It doesn't matter if I know a formula inside out. I will use the function wizard because I love the fact that it shows the result before you actually hit OK on the formula. So you can see it in 2 places. I can see it's working. I can't tell you the number of times that I've forgotten to like put a space in between the first name and the middle name. So it just helps keep me right and helps make me just a little bit more efficient. Then I need to, clear my filters, work through everything, put it all together, remember to then copy and paste my names, special values, pull it back through into the right cell and clear my filters. And again, copy, paste special values, make sure that everything becomes nice and text. And so eventually I've got a nice first name, last name. You can see here there's still one that needs to be done. So I'm going to get those. And yeah, the top bar tells you if it's a formula or not. Delete the initials that you've already moved. Just that helps me keep me on track to know what I've already cleaned and what I haven't. So that's a good way of doing that. Yeah, I talk about, how there's a number of different ways you can tell if you've got a filter on, but if you try and select the whole lot and then it's all blocked out like this, you'll know that you've got filters on. Love kind of dragging down and double clicking on the little green square. It's a something fill. I can't remember the name of it. I never call it that. I just call it the little green square. But again, when you've got your formulas on, I never cut and paste because that is just a disaster. I always drag down to make sure. Most of the time when you double click on that little green square, it will populate down, but there's the occasional time it won't, and then you have to manually drag it. I'm sure you, and there's no like rhyme or reason why it does that. It drives me nuts, but that is what it does. And then just once you've cleaned your names, don't forget to format them in whatever casing you want. You can either do that at the beginning or the end of the process, whatever is easiest for you. Um, Double click, copy that down, and then, put them back to values, and then, suddenly everything is looking nice and clean and tidy and much nicely formatted and makes my heart sing. And then, of course, we've cleaned it all, so then we need to merge it back into that original data set. So I'm going to be using an XLOOKUP. Again, I'm using the function wizard because it's just my best friend. So I'm looking up on A2. Now, you can actually select the whole column. I prefer to do the cell. I think it's just a hangover from my VLOOKUP days. And also, kind of a trust thing, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, I'll put that in. I will then choose my lookup array and my return array, and then it's showing me my result is Patricia, which is great. I'm going to pull that through, and then I'm going to have my dollar signs to fix those formulas or those cells that I need to, so that when I drag it across to the right, it will pull only the bits that I need it to and fix on the others. So you then get your first name, last name. And then ta-da! You now have nice clean names, and you just got to remember to copy, paste special values, and that is the names all nice and cleaned. What about addresses? Well, they're a little bit more tricky, and I can tell you, especially the couple of projects that I've worked on recently, I have seen the worst of the worst when it comes to addresses. You've never seen anything like this in your life, so this will take a lot more patience and time and a lot of coffee. So decide on your format and stick to it. You can either do that at the start of the process or the end. It's up to you. If the address is all in one cell, then it might be easier to do it at the start. It might mess up like UK postcodes, it'll mess up the letters, but you can always put an uppercase on the UK postcodes at the end. So whatever's going to work best for you. Think about how many columns you might need in that address. Like, is it address 1, 2, 3, then city, state, postcode, zip code, country? Depends on the address data you're working with. Prep that data. So sometimes I see, like I say, mixed formatting in addresses. So there might be some with commas that will separate the address line and some without. If you have mixed, I'd say it's better just to remove them. It's much easier to take a comma out or a full stop than it is to put it in. So take it out. You're going to have to work with separating maybe by spaces anyway. So, that might just be the case. And there are some tools out there now. I have been using some. They're not all great. Like GPT, um, I separated on spaces, so obviously it gives you like a column for each word. GPT was pretty good at trying to kind of figure it out, but it wasn't all the way there. It was like maybe 60%. It still needed a lot of manual work, but there are things that can help you now. Things are moving quickly. Decide on your upper or lowercase. As I say, I prefer it in like sentence lowercase, but entirely your preference. So I've got my row ID now, did remember it this time, and you want to hide any columns that you don't need, just so that you can be clear on what it is you're focusing in on. Then I'm going to copy that into this new tab that I'm working in to clean it. I'm going to copy that address over, and I'm going to do that with a proper formula, and I might need to do a trim as well, although I mean, you're going to be separating by spaces in this instance, but you don't want a blank column if there's two spaces. So a proper and a trim would be good. And actually, I do have a formula for that now, but I've not put that in here yet. I'm going to change those postcodes to uppercase at the end. As you can see, I am doing my text to columns, and what have I done? I forgot to do my paste special values, and so I've gone back and fixed that. I've then started to search and replace any punctuation. I don't just remove punctuation, I always add a space in as well. The reason being that sometimes there's not a space after the punctuation, so if you remove it, you end up joining two words together. And again, that is very difficult to separate. So better to have extra spaces than no spaces at all. Remove the filter, and then you'll actually see how many kind of columns that you have now. Like I say, the other thing that you might want to do when you do that search and replace is once you've done the search and replace and removed any punctuation, do a search and replace for 2 spaces and replace it with 1 space and run that and see if you get anything. If you do and it's a high number, you might want to run that again because there might be some 3 spaces in there. So just little things that I do to kind of keep on top of the spaces because Excel loves a space and loves to recognize it as a unique thing. Then, just like with the names, we're going to use the concatenate to clean the data and we're going to put it all back in. The way I like to work is like a triangle. So I start in the right, clean those, and then work my way into the left. That's my process. You might have something different, but that's the way I like to do it. So again, rather than do it row by row, I'll like start by pulling through as many postcodes as I can first. Then I'll look at counties, then I'll look at cities and start to build it like blocks. And that's really the process, and you're just going to do that again and again and again and again and again, and then it's going to look nice and clean and tidy. And then if we go to phone numbers, they're a nightmare. So decide on a format and stick to it. Prep that data beforehand. So I actually have gone now for the preference of just removing all spaces and all punctuation. Depending on whether it's a global data set or not, depends on whether there'll be a country dialing code. But if not, get rid of all that punctuation before you start. And yeah, decide on whether you need those country codes or not. Sometimes we have clients that they won't use country codes for like their home base, but anything outside of the home country, they'll put them in. So here's an example of some messy US, UK data. I'm using my search and replace for anything that I don't want. Then where I do have a mixture of some country codes and not, and I want to add them in, I'm going to use a left formula in a new column so that I can then start to filter. And actually what I can see is I have done left 2 there, but actually what I probably should have done was left 3, but it still gives me something. And then obviously I've tweaked it here, so you can do a filter on your left formula column and filter out anything that has a +4 or a +44, which is the UK code, or a +1. So they've already got their dialing code. If we want to add in anything that doesn't have a dialing code, then what we should have left in our filtered data is anything without a plus dialing code. So then I am going to use concatenate and I'm going to use the +44 and add it in. So in this example, I'm just making it all UK numbers. If you do have mixtures of countries, you could also filter on the country because you'll have that from the address information too. So you could filter on UK, do all the +44s, filter on the US, do all the +1s. So you can make it methodical. And of course, my function wizard, I love it. It's telling me it's looking right. That's all good. So I'm quite happy with that. And then, you just have to systematically work through and tidy up those numbers and add in those bits and then bring it all together. Just like I've been showing you, pulling it through. And then you would, let me just go back to that. You would, once those are cleaned, you would then put them back into your main data set using the row ID, using an XLOOKUP. I know you're more than familiar with that. You're probably using way more advanced stuff than that anyway. So that's my tips for cleaning numbers. Shall I keep going or do we have questions?
Susan, I can see some questions. I drop it in the
Okay,
chat.
let's pause for some questions.
Yes. There are some questions that are from WhatsApp. Why are you not using the new formulas?
What new formulas are they referring to?
I don't know. This is a question. Okay. So,
Okay, so also I will get onto it, but as in my business, we don't actually use Excel as a data cleaning tool. So I don't clean data in Excel. So that's why. Um, Mainly the main reason Excel's not my main tool, but I understand and appreciate that most people are using Excel. And so everything that I've developed in the tool that I use, I have kind of reverse engineered to be able to do in Excel. So, I do not claim to be the expert in this space, but I know enough to be able to be a little bit more efficient.
great. So, there's a question. What is the dirtiest data challenge you have ever faced recently, and how did you clean it up?
Oh, this is a great one because it's literally been this year, a 250,000 row CRM system with the worst address data that I have ever seen. The spelling mistakes were atrocious. In fact, some of the systems they had the company name in the name column, and then they had part of the name in the first line of the address. So we had to pull that through. I talked about like three spaces in between words. Some of these names had like 20 spaces in between words. It was nuts. The You could have one company with two different addresses and they could both be wrong. You might have the right address and the wrong postcode, or the wrong postcode and the right address. There were like the wrong cities, the wrong counties. It was unbelievable, and it was so time consuming. And you couldn't use any kind of address lookup for that because the postcode was wrong or the address was wrong. So, and then if it's just on a name, there was lots of schools, and there's a lot of like religious schools in the UK. So it could be like St James's School. Well, there's like 50 St James's schools in the UK. So, really, really manual and a lot of Googling. So that was a real challenge for me. So that's definitely been my messiest.
Since you have asked Susan about this name, have you came across something like you have the same vendor name or
Yeah.
same customer with different language?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, yeah. We work a lot with like Asian data too, so it might be in a different language completely. We have to translate it. So yeah, that. And again, you can't just rely on translation because a lot of the Chinese company names, it might be PricewaterhouseCooper, but it might be Beijing Information Technology PwC company, and you have to figure out from that one or two words in the middle of it what it actually is. So yeah, it can be tricky.
So basically, when you do this, you really need to go and see the information also sometime. It might take a lot of time, right?
Yeah, and actually, so quite often if it is in a foreign language, we will go to the website to actually get a better idea of what the company is and what they do in that language rather than the translation as well. Context again is so important.
Super. Okay, this is really nice. How do you usually deal with inconsistent date and time formats?
Well, it's always about copying that column, making copies of it, and then splitting out what you can from the date. So sometimes you might only be able to use the year because it's inconsistent, or sometimes it might be you could get the month in the year or and again, if you don't know what format it's in, it can be really tricky. I don't tend to work with time, so I couldn't really give you an answer on that one. Um, but yeah, taking that column and then splitting it out and looking at what can we actually use here. That's how I would approach it. And you can't make stuff up. What you could do is potentially, for example, I work a lot with invoices. So if I have an invoice number, there might be another file within the system that has like other invoice information. So then we could use a lookup to pull through the proper invoice date, for example, from that data into this file. So as long as you've got that unique thing that, invoice number, purchase order number, order date, delivery date, those kinds of things, delivery number, delivery note, then you can get that information potentially from maybe a different system.
Yeah. And this is also interesting one. Have you ever built a reusable cleaning template in Excel?
I have not, and the reason is every single project that we work on is a different data set. If I worked in one organization, then I'd be able to do that. I'd be able to build that template. But every single data set is different standards, different column names, different types of columns. There's no standardization across what we do. So no, but if I was in working with one specific type of data, then yeah, I would absolutely do that. And I guess that's what samification can do for the normalization is kind of take that and clean it all for you rather than you having to go through and remove the inks and the limiteds and all that kind of stuff.
Great. And this is also interesting one. What is your method of handling the missing values in the data set?
I like that. It depends on the values. So for example, we see so this messy data set that I was just talking about, there were missing cities and missing counties within the address data. But once it became clean, I could then create master lists of like a specific postcode in the city that was assigned to that postcode. So then if there was more than one of that postcode and it didn't have a city, I could map that in. And then I did another mapping list, which was a list of cities and a list of counties. Or in the US, it could be cities and states. So where there were cities but no county or state, I could then map that information in. And then obviously some of it is manual, you just have to go and find it. But that is, you can generally get a lot of what you need from the data once it's been cleaned to populate some missing things. Um, and then, yeah, again, it could be if you've got missing values, it could be, is there another file or another system where I can pull that information from and then do a lookup and bring it in? So check those kind of things. And then, then it is down to good old-fashioned hard work and manual cleaning or input, sometimes that's what you have to do.
Okay, so sorry, I was muted. There's another comment like saying about Power Query would be useful in your data transformation.
Again, had I not been using this other tool, then yeah, absolutely. I would learn that and I would know that inside out. I buy an off-the-shelf tool. You've seen examples of it, where the color blocks, it blocks the same values in color so that you can visually see stuff as well. You can manipulate the data in ways that I haven't seen in any of their tools, and we do have a tool section, so I'll talk to you a little bit more about that then. But absolutely, I just literally I'm non-stop and I haven't had time to learn Power Query or anything like that. But you're absolutely right. You guys are the experts in this space. But hopefully what I've shown you, you can then take and translate into a way that would be even more efficient in Power Query. Go and make it your own. Build your own like cleaning template data sets.
Sure. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, you can continue,
So we've
Suzanne.
only got a couple more sections to go, guys. We're nearly
Yeah,
there.
yeah. So you can still continue. We still have a time of nearly like 20 minutes more.
Yeah, we're nearly there. This bit's really quick. So just quickly, maintaining and spot checking data. Again, you guys could use dashboards and visualizations, but honestly, a pivot table can do the job. I've got some normalized supplier names, the categorization, and I'm going to put it in a tabular form. I'm going to remove all the subtotals so it's nice and clean. And then I'm just going to scroll down and start looking for anything that doesn't look right. So Dell is classified as a courier there, so I know that's not right. I could flip that round and I could have the category level 1 as the first point in the data, the pivot table, and then I could have the category and then the list of normalized suppliers in that category. That's another good way to sense check data. So for example, if the category is IT and we've got DHL, which is a transport company, under the IT category, we know something's not right. Again, it's looking at different ways, the same information, but in different ways to kind of pick things out. I have two screens. I'm sure you guys have two screens, but when I am forced to work with just like my laptop screen, I'll click on a new window, arrange all, and then I'll have them vertically side by side. So I'll have my pivot in one bit, and then I'll have my raw data on the other side. And what I'll do is I can then scroll through the pivot, look for the things that aren't right, clean the data in the raw data, and then refresh the tab. And then the pivot table is refreshed and it removes the data that's been cleaned. And then I can keep going through systematically through the pivot table to just tweak and fix the bits that aren't right. But it's not just about pivot tables, it's about looking for patterns too. So I told you about the latitude and longitude before. You know, this one stood out because actually you could see all the data around it was the other way around. So it became apparent, pretty obvious, pretty quickly that that's what had happened. Here is some more latitude and longitude information. As you can see, we've got two coronation roads there. That's got to be a spacing thing. Didn't do a trim on that. But also, this would be a flag to me. It's like a digit shorter than everything else around it. It could be legitimate, but it might not be. So that is something that I would want to check and flag for. So just little patterns in the data just to check. And then MRO data, you want to check if maybe you have multiple descriptions per part code, which blows my mind, but it does actually happen and can happen quite a lot. So here we have some part numbers and multiple descriptions. But what's more concerning is this one at the bottom where you have like 5 different products and they're all different and they all have the same code. Like, I don't even know how that's possible to work and do that. But that's a true data set that actually happened. So again, it's just a good way of interrogating your data and looking for things where you know it should be a one-to-one and it's not. Then what else have we got? So this is my tool. This is the Omniscope. So what I can see here by the colors is I've got one supplier and then I've got all these, actually just 2 codes, but listed multiple times. And then we've got multiple descriptions again. So it's a really good way of visually just looking and saying, uh-oh, that doesn't look right. But then on the flip side of that, we've got this one code that is assigned to 2 different suppliers. So each supplier should really have its own unique code. And they have 2 different descriptions there as well. So just another way of looking at the data. And also you can use pivot tables. Like I said, it could be multiple addresses per person or per email address, not per person. Names are too generic, but per email address. If you've got 2 different physical postal addresses, then you might want to tidy up your data. So there's lots of different, depending on what you're working with, you could look at product code and weights and make sure that it's only got one weight or one product dimension against it. There are so many different things you can do quickly with a pivot table. And honestly, that's as quick as anything you'll find, unless you've got some dashboards set up that you want to have a look at. But super quick, a really great way to just spot check your data. And even things like looking at your most popular customers or your most popular product and just making sure that that's right first, because if there's something wrong with that data, then that means you've probably got a bigger problem. But also spot check those smaller value, less popular bits of data, because they're just as important and they could be hiding a lot of trouble in the background that could come to bite you in the backside one day. So that's my tips on how to spot check. Probably nothing new that you haven't done already, but it's always worth just reiterating. And there are so many tools that you could use, and you probably are using. And the tool that I use is called Omniscope. So I can data model in there, but then I can also interrogate and manipulate the data and edit it in ways, like I say, that you just can't in others. If you do want to find out more about that, on the Classification YouTube channel, there are like how-to videos as well, so you could have a look and go and have a look there. Finally, I just want to take you through the dirty data maturity model, because it can be really hard to sell, or know where you are in the data maturity line. But, all these consultant models are so boring, and so I decided to come up with something a bit more fun. So at the start of our dirty data maturity model is the dirtiest of dirty data. It's in a pile on the floor. It's unwashed. It's smelly. It's really messy. And I like to describe it like this. Think of it like it's the equivalent of turning your underwear inside out for an extra day. You know you shouldn't be doing it, but you think you can get away with it. And that's the day you have an accident and you get caught and found out. And that is what walking around with dirty data is like. You are just waiting for an accident to happen and get caught out. So that's where we are at this stage. Then we're declassed data. So it's starting to get a little bit more organized. You might have some power pivots, you might be doing a little bit, but it's not on a regular basis. There's nothing structured there. What we want to be trying to get to is distributed data. So you start to have some rules and processes, maybe some formulas or automations, some standards, some regular or semi-regular maintenance. But we're really moving towards disordered data where, you're actually maybe using SQL and you're doing some really nifty stuff and you're refreshing that data regularly, and maybe not one person's looking after it, but and there's a little bit of, still need to put the data quote on, but we're getting there. It's looking pretty good. But what we're really aiming for is the pinnacle dirt-free data, which actually doesn't exist. But the best you can get is, organized, consistent, organized, accurate, trustworthy data, organized, categorized, clean, regularly refreshed. There's no moths in the cupboard for your data either, because it's looked at. It's enriched. There's no gaps. It's normalized. It's looking really as good as it can be. So that is the dirty data maturity model. And that has been my whistle-stop tour. I hope that you have enjoyed that and seen a different side to data cleaning. I guess my summary for you is really that there are no shortcuts, there are no quick wins. You have to put the work in. It's everybody's responsibility to help keep data clean, and you've got to make sure that that data quote is on as well. So I'm going to leave you with one last video to have a little bit of fun. Hi, I'm Susan Walsh, and companies across the globe are at it. They're replacing their third-party spend classification tools with the Classification Guru, a specialist in spend data classification, taxonomy customization, and data cleansing. Dirty data, nasty typos, stubborn duplicates. The Classification Guru does it all. Don't waste your time on multiple data cleaning products. You only need one. The Classification Guru. Bam, and the data is clean. And that is me. Thank you so much for your time. This is my LinkedIn QR code if you want to follow me. Between the Spreadsheets version 2 is out in October. If you want to learn how to build taxonomies, normalize suppliers some more, classify data. If you've got any more questions, we'll go through those now. Thanks for your time.
That's awesome, Susan. It was really lovely, sharing us that data insights, that how to deal with dirty data. It's really important in today's days, that we have that knowledge that how can we deal with these kinds of
We are going to be the most valuable people, the ones that know how to clean data,
sa-
because AI is just not going to work without it.
uh, Okay, so as we are going to hit the clock, I'm going to get disconnect myself from the YouTube. But before that, Susan, as always, I ask my speaker if they have any last words, any motivational words, or anything you wanted to say before we say bye to the YouTube friends.
Yeah, so, if it seems like a big task, make it small and manageable, do a little bit each day, chip away at it. Make sure your data's got its coat on, consistent, organized, accurate, and trustworthy, and keep that data coat on. Maintain your data, please.
That was awesome, Suzanne. So, my friends, thank you very much for joining today. And do let me know in the chats and your LinkedIn. And if you want to connect with Suzanne always for data insights or anything, you have a project, you want to get it done, Suzanne is there. The classified guru is there for you.
Feel
So,
free to ask me some questions as well. Send me a message. Always happy to help.
yeah, sure. Awesome. So we're going to end the live stream, but we're still going to stay back on Zoom. So see you in the next meetup, which is going to be end of this month. And bye from YouTube. Take care. See you. Okay, so we are here back.